Everyone, before we start, we're just going to call to order and establish a quorum. So I'm going to ask, Kathleen to call roll first. Hey, Kathleen, are you there? Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. So how about doing a roll call before I start?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Dr. Manzi,
Present.
Miss Elliott,
Present.
Miss Cadenas,
Present.
Dr. McAloon,
Present.
Dr. Zapp,
Present.
and welcome, Dr. Lee.
Present.
Thank you.
Great. And on that note, I would like to, before we start, welcome Dr. Lee, who's our newest board member. We're very happy to have you. Welcome. Unfortunately, we can't meet in person, but hopefully soon. But we really do appreciate you coming aboard, and thank you in advance for your service. I'd also like to welcome our new attorney, Mr. Chin. Also, thank you very much for participating with us today.
Great, thank you. Glad to be here.
Great. Okay, so I want to make a public comment here that the board may not discuss or take any action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. So this board meeting will now start. Has anyone had a chance to review and approve? Do I have a motion to of the meetings, the board meeting that took place on June 5th?
Michael Zaff, I move we accept them.
Okay.
I second. Darlene, second.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the board meeting minutes. So Kathleen, do we need to vote on this? Kathleen? Oh. So, Kathleen?
This is the moderator. I will unmute her microphone just in case that is
Thank
an
you.
issue for her.
Thanks.
Kathleen, are you there?
Am I still connected?
Yes, you are. We're waiting for Kathleen to take a roll call on accepting the minutes of the last meeting. Hey, Brian.
It appears that Kathleen may have lost her audio connection.
Okay. So
Yeah,
Is
I'm on
Brian
the cell
on?
phone with her right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what it was? I tried to use a headset. Okay, Brandon.
All right.
Okay. So can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay. So this is for the minutes.
Correct.
Dr. Manzi,
Yeah, yes, approved.
Miss Elliott,
Yes.
Miss Cadenas,
Approved.
was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. McAloon,
Yes.
Dr. Zapp,
Yes.
and Dr. Lee.
For the June 5th meeting, I wasn't present.
Okay.
You can abstain.
Yes.
Abstain.
You know what? Also, Daniel, sorry that we kind of just jumped you into this. If you have any questions during this thing, feel free to stop us. Okay. All right. So now that's been approved. We're going to receive an update on the budget and fund condition from the Department of Consumer Affairs, DCA Budget Office.
This is the moderator. I will promote Marie Reyes to a panelist. Miss Reyes, you are now a panelist. You can unmute your microphone and speak. Thank you. We can hear you now.
Okay, good. I wasn't quite sure. Good morning. I'm your interim budget analyst for the program. How's everybody doing? Thank you for having me today. Today I will go over the budget in regards to podiatry, for the podiatric board. The very first attachment that was provided by the program to you is the expenditure report. The expenditure, unfortunately, fiscal year 1920 has not closed, so the information that you have in front of you is based on fiscal month 11. So that means it's information up to May. However, a projection has been provided for year end, and it summarizes what's in here. The budget that was provided to the program for 1920 is 1.534 million. We're projecting the expenditure to be at 1.419 by end of fiscal year when it closes. This still could change simply because this is a straight projection. Any questions first? Any question on the expenditure report?
Just quick question on the budget. There seems to be on the projections for year end. The personnel services total seems higher than budgeted. Can you just review what led to that difference?
Well, it could be a lot of factors when it comes to the personnel services. You can factor in the merit salary increases, that was in, basically that was for the program. Also, there could be staff benefits that, let's say, for example, I originally had at the start of the fiscal year, because our benefits changes in January, I could change from single to family. Those could be some factors that can be put in there. Did that answer the question?
Well, it seems that they're really tied to the permanent positions and staff benefit increases. Are we expecting those to stay on track or continue to grow for the next few years? I don't know if Brian, you might have some insight into this.
The salary is adjusted every year. We have some calculations that we have a drill that we does all the calculations and we adjust them accordingly.
So this is Brian Naselman, EO. Maria, so I'm expecting everything to be kind of static throughout the next 2 years because staff was supposed to get a salary increase that didn't happen because of COVID.
Yes.
So, not knowing after the COVID, I think we're on this rotation for 2 years. They deducted 9.8%, I believe.
9.23.
9.23% of our salary deduction. So we'll just have to take a look at this the next time we generate the numbers and see what that looks like. But for the future, I'm not seeing anything happening for the next 2 years.
Also, please take into account that this report is for fiscal year 1920. The reduction in salary is for fiscal year 2021.
Correct. Brian, this is Darlene. Quick question. Are we at full staff or are we still down? Or are we just using
we are
temporary?
at full staff. Yeah, we are at full staff, full office staff. The only vacancy we have is the public speakers appointment, and we're still working on that. But with the COVID, things are moving at a snail pace. So DCA execs, they're aware of it, and so we're trying our best effort to get that position filled, and then we'd be up to full board member, and currently we're full staffed.
Okay, perfect.
Brian, I have a question too. This is the current, like she said, this is the budget for 2021, 20?
No, it's 1920.
20, okay. So this doesn't reflect anything if indeed we get past the increase.
No, so that's on our next, when we get to the ledge, item AB 3330 is expected to be signed. It's on the governor's desk right now. We just need to have him sign it, and then we're good to go. And
So
that's gonna counterbalance a lot of things.
Because if we look at months in reserve for 1920, it's like 4.2 months, yeah?
Yeah, I see.
That's correct.
But then as we extrapolate it out, it's not looking very good.
Right, and that's why we had to push.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why we pushed so hard for that fee increase.
Yeah.
Once we hit that fee increase, that 1318 for the biannual licenses, remember in our fee study, 21 and 22 goes up to like 2.8, and then it rises up to like 4.8, and then it rises up to 6.9. With our goal being at 12 months of reserve, but it's going to take us a little while to get there, but we're not going to show a negative.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. And then the next slide would be on the program's revenue, that it's expected as of fiscal month 11, it's basically generating a revenue of 1.2 million, but we're projecting it to be at 1.336 for last fiscal year. As Brian stated, with the bill being on the governor's governor's desk, it would rectify the board's structural imbalance.
If I'm understanding correctly, then the current projected year 1920, we have total revenues of 1.3, but for 2021, but for 21-22, where we currently have the month of reserves at negative 1.4, that would not necessarily come to pass once the bill is signed and we have the adjustment in fees. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, that should increase the revenues that would be coming in once the governor signs the bill.
Thank you.
And this is Brian again on the bill. Once it's signed, it won't be effective until June 1st, 2021. So let's get our year 2020 and look forward to 2021. So that gives us time to get the notifications out. But we could talk more about this one in legislative.
Okay, that'd be great. So do we have anything else for the fund condition? Any other questions? All right.
Great. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Executive Officer's Report.
Hi, this is Joe. Madam President, would you like to invite for public comment on item 5?
Oh, absolutely. So is there any public comment on item 5 that we just discussed, which is our budget and fund condition from the Department of Consumer Affairs?
This is the moderator. I have opened the Q&A panel for public comment. If you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. You can enter "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and submit to all panelists. We will take comments in the order they are received. I will pause a few moments to allow time for individuals to submit their requests for comment. Dr. Manzi, at this time, we've not received any requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Panel is closed.
Okay. Next up is receive and possible action on the Executive Officer's Report. So we asked Brian to take over from here.
Okay, so we got the Executive Officer's Report. Unfortunately, Andrea had another commitment, so I'm going to have Judy Manzi talk about the licensing program stats. And it looks like it's pretty basic this go around. Just some information for you guys to take a look at in here. Go ahead, Dr. Manzi.
Okay, so I'm going to come at this a little differently. If you look on your packet and get to page attachment A, where it says Podiatric Medical Board licensing statistics, the new licenses issued year-over-year comparison. This is a really good graph to kind of expedite this particular licensing issue. As you can see, go to the new licenses issued by fiscal years. You can see that our 19-20 years, 112 new licenses were issued, which is, a little bit of an increase. And then if you look at the next page, it's the next category, you can see our current active licensing right now is 2,260 active licenses in the state. And for our initial licensing applications that are pending, we have a total right now of 18. If you look at the next one, the categories, which is important to kind of look at, is our out-of-state, our third year residents that are out-of-state, and our third year residents that are in-state, and how they make up the different total DPM licensed in California. So, it's usually very robust regarding our third year residents that are in-state and both out-of-state. That's usually our biggest category. And then we had a total of 112 for licensed for our fiscal year that we're talking of. And as far as how many maybe outgoing licenses we have, usually that would be something that reflects in usually retirement, I guess. And then if we look at our newly licensed DPMs, there's a nice breakdown of age and gender, which is also interesting to look at. And these kind of comparisons were kind of requested by the board of the licensing committee to give us kind of a, finger on the pulse of what is the trend of people going into and out of our state as far as licensing goes. And for renewals, and once again, keep in mind, and this is really for our newer board member, that this kind of ties so closely into our budget because, basically the revenues we get to run this board is off the licensing fees. And so it's important to keep an eye on how many active participants we have. And if you look at the renewal data, we have 30 delinquent total for the April, May, and June for the renewals. And I can't say if this is higher or low. I think it's pretty much average for what is typical. I don't think it really has much to do with COVID. And our renewal breakdown is then below as well for the breakdown of who renews their licenses and what kind of licenses we get. And the next thing is the residents licensing statistics. And once again, those are kind of pretty straightforward, but the total residence licenses for the academic period of July 19 to June 2020 is 125. And the permanent licenses, once again, are listed below that we got 34. And that makes sense because it reflects, they don't get their permanent license till they've completed their 3 years. So that's the licensing report. Does anybody have any questions regarding them?
Judy, this is Maria.
Yes.
And on the first of all, thanks for stepping in and doing the report. And on the breakdown for initial application categories, I noticed that the out-of-state third-year residents have continuously increased over the last 4 years, and at a much faster rate than the California third-year residents. Is that something that we should note, or is that just something that just is part of the field that's happening in terms of the licensing measures?
Well, I think it's a great thing, personally, but I really don't know if that's like a, what could be reflecting it. Now, a couple things come to mind. One is the Arizona school. Not that it hasn't been there for a while, but it's a West Coast school. And, we would have to look at where are they coming from, to get a better idea of that. And actually, that might be something we do want to look at. Like, is this bump up because of one particular school or, or one particular residency program that, feeds them? I wouldn't know, but it would be a really interesting thing to look at as to where they're coming from. We could put that on the request to the license to Andrea to see if she wants to look that up for us.
Thank you.
Okay, and I will talk to her about that. I think that'd be kind of an interesting thing.
This is Dr. Zapp. On the attachment A, where they have the gender age graphs, I was noticing none of those percentages add up to 100. They're usually like 110. It seems like the graphing software could be updated.
Okay, we will also have her look at that.
This is Brian. I'm making notes. I see that as well. I know this is a really hard breakdown for her to generate. So I think the last time it was about 105 over. So we'll have to work on this, and I'll have to see what she did to generate this graph.
Also,
maybe putting down the actual numbers would make it clearer.
Okay. I think when we were first asked to do this, they wanted percentiles, but we can do it either way. So
It wouldn't take long
that
with a
might be a little
calculator to
bit,
get.
yeah, it might be easier to decipher, right, if it was just straight numbers.
Right. Also,
Gotcha.
any other comments on these this presentation?
Hi, this is Daniel Lee. Just a quick comment on the licensing statistics on residents Q4 report. Just to comment, yes, there are residents coming from out of state, most likely joining programs in California. And there are programs in California that do accept 30 years. And it could be multifactorial why they're coming to California. One, to practice in California, or two, because their native programs may not have enough surgical volume. So they partner up with residency programs in California in order to have their numbers for graduation. So I think it's a good thing for California, but to keep an eye on that and see how many is the influx of out-of-state residents versus the efflux of our native California residents perhaps moving out. But that number seems very encouraging.
Right. And, the other thought I had on this was fellowships. So typically, if you're, coming to join, we talked about fellowships in the past and how, some of them you can identify and some of them can't. And that's why I really wanted to get a handle on these fellowships that are in California, because we know the ones that are cited on the Federation of Podiatric Medical Board's website, and those are the ones that they identify as fellowships. But like Dr. Lee brings up, there could be other, I don't know, fellowships that are called fellowships that maybe aren't showing up on that particular database.
Oh,
So,
I have some insight. Hi, this is Daniel Lee again. I have some insights on that. Years ago, with CPMA, there was an issue with the in-house categorization of anyone who is in training after 3 years. So it could be a software issue or categorization of what do you call someone who's after 3 years coming to a fellowship. So an F1 or F2 to categorize them did not exist. I think to this day we don't have that. So capturing the data on how many fellows we have, unless we do it by hand and direct calling, they haven't been able to garnish that type of information. But I think in the future, having some type of category for them will have a more clear data collection after the 30 year of in-training.
yeah, I really did not know that information, because we were kind of going crazy here a few meetings back trying to figure out, where are these fellowships? We know the ones that are listed, but so I think this would be a good project for the licensing committee to do, even if we know how many are coming, because they're looking for these licenses, and, to know where they're coming and maybe where they're going would be a good thing to know.
I totally agree.
This is Dr. Zapp. I have knowledge of one fellowship, but really the person is licensed as a podiatrist and is employed by a surgery center. So that's just being categorized as a podiatrist. I think most of the fellows aren't in training the way we normally would think of somebody in training.
Right. Okay, so that is something, Brian, that we could maybe have our licensing committee look into. All right, other subject I just want to touch on very briefly here, because it does come under licensing. As you know, we recently met with the Federation of Podiatric Medical Boards, and they brought up this whole issue with the National Board of Podiatric Medical Examiners about the clinical, it's like their step 3 kind of, it's the clinical proficiency exam or something, and they fly to Pennsylvania, and it's actually an exam they take on a patient who's an actor, and and they have to pass this Part 3 exam to get their full DPM degree, apparently. And because of COVID, they weren't able to do it. So this is very typical of the DOs and MDs. They do the same test. So they've wavered theirs for that particular time period. They said, fine, you don't have to do it. We're going to just waiver it and then move on. Because they had something like 35,000 people they had to test. Well, we obviously don't have that many. And the National Board of Podiatric Medical Examiners decided, no one's getting a waiver. They might get an extension, but not necessarily a waiver. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because you can now go and schedule to go take the test. The only reason I'm bringing this up is we recently had an applicant coming from out of state, because in order to get a California license, you have had to take this test, which is, I guess, the same as, it used to be the ample or the step 3, but anyways, it's in our licensing requirement, but you had to have taken it within 10 years. And this guy had taken it like 11 years ago, but there was no way for him to go take the test. So the idea that, this kind of glitch right now does occur. I just want to make everyone aware. My suggestion is we just take it by case if there's a issue of giving a license because of the lack of the ability to go ahead and schedule and take this test. So all this is to make you aware and keep you up to speed as to what's going on with that. Darlene, I see you have your hand raised.
I do. Talking about the Federation, with COVID and the use of virtual, is the Federation requiring doctors to now maybe look into some type of training for doing kind of the virtual doctor's appointment, or is anybody overseeing that on the Federation side?
So that's a really good question. And I'm not sure that the Federation would be the person. The Federation just basically gathers what your state is doing and because all the states differ in their licensing requirements. California's got one of the more, rigorous list of things you have to do to get a license in California. And so if you go to their website, you can see who's asking what. Now, telemedicine is a very good question. As a board, we might want to ask CPMA what their guideline is for telemedicine. I know there is billing codes for telemedicine. I do lots of telemedicine from Kaiser, but that's, we got trained through Kaiser to do it. So I don't know what exactly, if there is a training requirement or anything like that, even for maybe someone who does it outside of a Kaiser or an HMO that might be on this call could comment on it. But as of right now, I don't know that there's any specific thing you have to have in order to do a telemedicine visit, but it's a really good question.
No, I think that's something worth exploring for the licensing committee, or at least for, especially for the California Podiatric, for continuing credits. So yeah, definitely would like to keep this on the forefront. Thank you.
So what I will do is I will contact Federation and see if they have any other states that maybe have some sort of a training program or licensing board or whatever. Actually offering a training program for it's not a bad idea because it's not as easy as you think, especially if you do video visits. But it's a really good question, and yeah, we'll find out what we can about it for our next board meeting.
Right, and maybe something to also think about is going with the telemedicine is what is our role if there is an issue, and how do we enforce that on our end? Is something maybe we can also start to explore.
Okay. Brian, are you taking notes on this?
Thank you.
I'm trying to multitask here.
I'd like to have a comment too. This is Dr. Nath. With telemedicine, if a California licensed practitioner is residing in another state for practicing telemedicine in California, is that allowed, and do we have any control over that?
I'm sorry, Mike. What was that? What was the question?
If I decide to retire to Idaho, but still retain my license in California, and if I practice telemedicine in California, am I allowed to do that? And do you guys have any control over that?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. That's probably
It's probably
maybe
the better
Joe.
question
We
to
can get
ask,
some
actually.
legal legal research on that. I know by regulation and statute, I don't think it's identified there.
Right. I can look in. This is Joe. I can look into that and get back to the board in our next meeting. But off the cuff, if I had to guess, I would say it would still regulate if the Practice Act is to protect the consumers of California, and you're treating by through electronic means out of state a California consumer, if you will, I would imagine that would still protect or still govern. But let me double check that and do some research, and I'll get back.
And Darlene, do you have something else you want to ask?
No, that was it. Sorry, is my hand still up? I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, any other licensing concerns or issues would anyone like to ask or comment here? All right. Well, if not, that's my licensing overview for this meeting.
Now I want to jump right in for a legal question. Jill, we've done this several ways through the years. The last time we had an attorney, he wanted us to have a public comment or or discussion, a vote on each individual program that we have listed here. In the past, we've always did that at the very end to accept all the reports and to vote on them. So I don't know if there's a new way of doing this, or should we go back to the old way of doing it, or should we vote on each program?
Right. So Anthony and I had just discussed this, and as long as the as there is an invitation for public comment at some point, and that the motions are clear, it should be fine. I think that if you have many items or sub items, for example, here in 6A through E, and then maybe perhaps there were more 2 or 3 times as much, you might want to open up for public comment while the public members' thoughts are fresh in their mind. Maybe they can present their concerns or questions more clearly rather than waiting till the end. But I don't have a preference, and I'll leave that to your discretion.
Okay, I think we'll gather it at the end. Is that okay, Dr. Manzi?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to handle this, because that'll be, we can lump them all together for our future agenda items. Right? Okay. Great. All right. Then the calendar is also at the end of this report for September to November 2020. So let's glance at that really quick so that we are all on the same page with what's going to happen next. Okay, so September. So we have these committees, and because of COVID, they've been kind of thrown into a little bit of flux. Although now we have a new board member, and unfortunately, welcome. We're so happy you're here. And Dr. Mansfield is not with us anymore as a member of our board. So what we're going to do is kind of keep the committees the way they are, and maybe assign or have Dr. Lee participate in one of them. We can talk about which one he'd maybe be interested in. And then we'll make a decision as to have a committee meeting. And we've done, just with the committees, and now we'll just do it via telephone to just see if there's anything going on with, within each committee. So our next board meeting would be November 30th?
No, it
And-
should be December.
I'm sorry. Jeez.
Uh,
Well, I see that the board committee meetings would be November 18th.
yes.
Okay, so
So
that's,
it's usually 3 weeks for the
Right.
board meeting after.
so I'm going to
Yeah.
suggest that we keep those meetings, even if they're just all to get regrouped together and see what's going on with each committee. Okay?
Okay.
So on November
That sounds good to
18th,
me.
we're going to have our committee meetings again. We're going to kind of just keep the committees the way they are right now. I think we're going to talk about that a little later, right? So
Yeah, it's going to be towards the end. Yeah.
right. So, but for calendar purposes, just take a look at that date, and that will be our next committee meetings. And then,
And I'll have Michelle send out reminders way before that. And then as we get closer, it would be the same format that we do a teleconference. I don't think we need to WebEx it. We can probably teleconference and just go through all the committee stuff.
okay. And you can just see that in October, they're going to do the January 2021 renewals get mailed out. And October 30th is a deadline for our footnotes, so we could talk about that when we get to the Education Committee report here. And the license renewal fees will be mailed out November 6th. And we'll keep in mind that we're going to do our November 18th committee meeting. Okay? Okay.
All right, that does it for licensing. Anybody have any more questions on licensing program? All right, let's move right along. Let's go to enforcement. And we don't have a chair for the Committee of Enforcement because that was Dr. Mansdorf. And so Bethany's going to jump in and give us her statistics for the enforcement program.
Good morning. Hello?
Are you there, Bethany?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you're breaking up.
Did I just come in to the office?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be right there.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because I had my earbuds in and now Bethany's going to take over captain's chair here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm having so many issues with my sound at my desk. But can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start with the enforcement statistics, and these cover the fourth quarter of the 1920 fiscal year. That's April through June of 2020. And then they also cover the total fiscal year of 1920 from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. I'm just going to go over a few highlights. I'll take one attachment at a time. So if there's any questions, I'll ask at the end of each portion. So starting with complaint data, that's attachment A. We're really looking pretty average with our numbers compared to the prior year. Of course, this was the first quarter that COVID hit. So I was kind of looking at these numbers to see if we'd see much change, but we're not really seeing too much change in the area of complaint intake at this time. We have a total of 34 complaints that were received for that quarter, and we're meeting the average days to close or assign, the target set by DCA at 10 days. Are there any questions on the complaint intake data? Doesn't sound like it. Okay. So moving on to attachment B is the investigation report. Here again, we're looking with the desk investigation, pretty average. The average days to complete investigations, we saw a good decline at 41%. The time to take to complete a desk investigation, it dropped, decreased. But when we look at the field investigations, we're looking at a really significant increase for the investigations that were completed for that quarter. I don't believe this has to do with COVID. These delays have been expected with the field investigations, and that is due to the staffing issues that Division Investigation had for a couple of years, where they were significantly short-staffed. They are now staffed again, and individuals are trained and getting caught up on investigations, but we're still seeing the impact of that staffing shortage. And that's shown here with the number of days to completion. So overall, we had a total of 34 cases assigned, 35 investigations were completed for that time period, and we're well above the target of 125 days to complete. For that quarter, it was 292 days, and this was due to the field investigations. Do we have any questions regarding the investigation report?
I have one question about the complaints and you know how quickly everything's either handled or not. So 46% of the complaints close within 90 days. So when those complaints we never see or hear about, right? Someone investigates them, says there's no merit or whatever, and closes them or whatever, right?
Yes, the majority of those are ones that don't go out to field investigation, but they're closed early on because there's really no violation that occurs.
So the point that there was sort of a backlog is my question, I guess, here. Like, do you think in total, you know, nobody looks at these very quickly and then says, no, get rid of these and let's investigate those? Or do you think just things stack up date-wise? You know what I'm saying? Like, when did the complaint come in?
The backlog is really with the field investigation. So these are complaints that were received. They were processed probably fairly quickly within the complaint unit at the desk investigation phase, reviewed by a consultant, and then determined to be sent out for further investigation to the field. And with the delays we're seeing are with the field investigation portion because of the staffing issues that they had for so long. And hopefully we see, you know, them really start to catch up, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions on investigations? Okay, then I'll move on to the disciplinary data report. That's attachment C. We had 4 cases initiated during the fourth quarter. We are currently, at the end of June, had 20 cases pending. On the AG's report, it's actually higher than that because there's some cases that are for the same individual, but there were 2 or 3 investigations running concurrently. And so they're opened as a new case, but I just count them as one matter for our report. And this number is higher at this point too. We've had a lot of activity in enforcement recently. One final order was completed in June. Again, we're well above the target time that DCA set. We're at 1,138 days for that case to complete, which is double what DCA would like to be seeing. There's a lot of delays that we cannot control once things get to the this level, the discipline level. And I have noticed a lot more legal delays with not getting responses from individuals, maybe waiting months for a signature, individuals wanting to, you know, either go to hearing or kind of not settling as easily as they have in the past. So all of these things, in addition to the investigations taking a longer time, are the reasons for our completion times here on the disciplinary area. Unfortunately, there's very little of that that's within our control. As far as citations, no citations were issued during that quarter. We don't have too many of those each year, and we had no new probationers added either. And at the end of the fourth quarter, there were 6 probationers, and then we have 5 individuals who have public letters of approval and conditions that I am currently tracking. Any questions regarding the disciplinary report? All right, well then moving on to attachment D, and this is the entire year-to-date totals for fiscal year 1920. Again, we're looking not too off from the data of last year. We had a total of 161 complaints received, which is a 5% decrease from the year prior. And we are at a average days to close or assign at 11 days, which is just barely over the target. Looking at the field investigations, a total of 162 were assigned, 155 were completed, with the average days at 171 days. Still above the target, but we'll do our best to continue working through that. And hopefully with the staffing issues resolved in the next year or so, we'll start really seeing these numbers come down. Disciplinary data, we had 10 cases initiated this year compared to 11 the last year. And we had 5 final orders with an average days to complete of 1,169 days, which is a 23% decrease over the year prior, although still well above the target we'd like to see. Total of 2 citations were issued for that year. The average days to complete, it looks like a crazy statistic of an increase of 1,493%. This again is due to our very small numbers of cases, and that sometimes the citation can be issued immediately upon receipt, and other times it's the result of an investigation. And so it may take, close to a year before it's referred for a citation. Any questions on the disciplinary data for the full year? Okay. The next report, attachment E, is the cases that are currently over at the Attorney General's office. I'm looking at my report here, and it looks like oh, here it is, okay. On the reverse side of the disciplinary report. So we're currently having 14 cases over there that have an age assigned to it. They have more cases than that. They haven't all been accepted for prosecution at this point, but they have been referred. And some of them, this is information that I get directly from the Attorney General's office, so it may not reflect everything that is current. But there's a little bit of information on the cases currently that they're currently working on. We've got some cases that have had a decision and have been signed, but we do have a few cases again that are just going back and forth. They're filing motions and going into like a writ process. So we're seeing some of these cases that are just not falling off this report as quickly as we expected. And of course, we still have a case in the going through appeal, and then we've got another case going through a mandate. Any questions on the Attorney General report? Okay, attachment F shows the trend of complaints initiated since the board implemented its continuing competence program back in 1999. So we can see that there was a large number of complaints we received at that time. It's 271 that year in particular. And since the continuing competence program was initiated, we've seen complaints fall significantly, with a low in like 2010, 2011. It has been creeping back up a little bit, but not nearly at the numbers in the past. And I believe we are seeing some new complaints coming in, or a higher volume of complaints coming in due to the ease of filing a complaint now online. Any questions on this attachment? All right, I'll move on to attachment G. This was a report that was requested I can't remember if it came from the licensing or enforcement committee. I decided to include it in my report this year. Last year it was part of licensing. But because it really has to do with enforcement, disciplinary actions, I thought it was more appropriate in the enforcement report. So this shows kind of a breakdown of information by gender, licensing date, what school was attended, what residency program was attended, the discipline type that they received, the date they were disciplined, how old they were at the time of discipline, how many years they were practicing at the time of discipline, what violations they were disciplined for, and whether they were in solo practice, corporate practice, or part of a group or hospital, if we had that information. And this goes back to 2013. That's about the past 6 years of data. I've taken out personal identifiers such as their birthday and name. Yeah, I don't remember who asked for it specifically, but I do remember that
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I asked for it specifically because I was just trying to see if there was any trend that could give us some help in, determining, is there something that we can proactively do? Because, this is our biggest budget item. This is where we spend most of our money, is this stuff.
Right.
And it'd be nice to know if there's anything we could do to control this. So thank you very much. It's a really helpful piece of information.
Yeah, I'll keep this going, and if the enforcement committee would like to see it more frequently, or I can just continue doing it every year. We've been averaging maybe about 6 disciplinary actions per year. So this last one I updated with just 6 cases and added it to the 5 years prior, and I can continue doing that. To provide the information to the board and see if there's any trends that we can identify.
Well,
Stephanie, this is Maria Cadenas. I just wanted to thank you for putting this together. This is very helpful. If we could even have it, even if it's just once a year, even if there was a row that provided a summary to help us just take a quick glance, for example, like maybe the percentages of by gender, maybe the years in practice since licensing, or the average age, even if the average years in practice, and then percentages by solo, corp, group, or hospital, just to have a sense of, like Judy said, where can we focus in helping address it. And within the violations, it's just interesting to read through all of them and see the similarities around that. And maybe it is part of the discussion of the board, like how do we code and how can we address this as we move forward. But again, thank you for the work of putting this together.
Yeah, you're welcome. And that's a great idea to do a summary. Perhaps in one of the next committee meetings, we can decide exactly what information we want summarized and how that's to be done. It can definitely be included in the next report.
Dr. Zapp, can we, I'm struck by how there's hardly anybody in their 20s and 30s and even early 40s that are listed as being under investigation. They're mature. We discussed this before, and it looks like we're going to eventually, as soon as these people retire, we're going to have a lot cleaner profession, a lot fewer disciplinary actions.
Yeah, from your lips to God's ears. I'm all for that. I mean, this is the thing. It's very hard to get a license in California. You got to have a 3-year residency program. You got to have a lot of stuff, that maybe it's age related, but I don't know that drug and alcohol abuse is, and I don't know that, I think those things maybe come with age with some of these people. I really don't know, but that's why the breakdown of the violation is a really good idea as well.
This is McAloon. The other thing that points out, there's a lot of S's in those columns too, because people in solo practice don't have other providers around them reinforcing positive behaviors. And so as Podiatric moves away from solo practice, we might also see these numbers drop as well.
it's really a great thing to put together, and thank you. I think that we are going to be using it, hopefully, to like Maria, suggested, to help us go forward.
Great. Any other questions on that particular summary? Okay, I briefly touched on the DCA performance measures. There's nothing new to report at this time. The latest data can be found online for 2018, 2019. I do have a deadline for reporting 2019-20 data to DCA. It's due October 2nd. And so hopefully sometime by the end of the year, they'll have that information updated for us for 1920. That concludes the statistical portion of my report. Any final questions on the statistics? Okay, I will move forward to the probation program update. The first area is our cost recovery. We collected $9,100 in cost recovery and probation monitoring costs for the fourth quarter. The average over the past 5 years was a little over 15,000, so we're a little below average. However, for the total year, we're well above the prior 5-year average. We totaled $113,657.50 for the year. And the prior average, the prior 5 years, was at $65,229. So it's a pretty significant increase of cost recovery. I believe that this is due to our ability to now accept credit card payments online, and we've been receiving larger lump payments from individuals that have been disciplined. Not included in this report, but I'll just go ahead and touch on it. We're seeing our numbers of probationers going down significantly as more individuals are getting public letters of approval with conditions. I just wanted to mention that we have a lot fewer probationers than we have in the past due to that. Any other questions on probation before I move on? Okay, the final segment of my report has to do with the consultant and expert program. This last training scheduled for June was canceled due to COVID. We do have some newly appointed consultants and experts. Have not yet held a training with anyone. We're waiting for contracts to finish processing. And once we have those contracts in place, I'll be connecting with individuals on either a one-on-one basis or possibly setting up a small Zoom or WebEx meeting to get them trained so they can start work for us. And with that, the final attachment, we have an application for an expert. You may know Dr. Mansdorf. He has served on our board for about 10 years and just recently left the board and would like to continue serving us as an expert consultant. So his CV is attached for your review. He meets all qualifications. And if you guys would like to discuss and make a motion, please do.
This is McAloon. I make a motion that we accept Dr. Mansdorf's application as a podiatric medical expert for the board.
Dr. Zeff seconds.
Great. Let's take a vote.
Okay, the vote.
Oh, wait, is there any discussion?
Right.
No, the only comment I have is I'm just ecstatic to see his resume, and yes, he is a valuable asset to the podiatric medical. So I definitely agree with the board.
Great. Any other discussion?
I certainly think we need to direct any cases involving ears to Dr. Mansdorf.
Well, I do hope he is listening. His time on the board was extremely valuable. I learned a lot from him. And in this new role, I hope to learn more. So if you're out there, Brian, thank you so much.
I know he continues to be an incredible resource. I agree. I think I wholeheartedly support this application. So, is there any other discussion?
Hi, this is Joe again. If I could interrupt for a second, prior to or during any votes, there should be an opportunity for public comment.
Oh, great. Okay. Is there any public out there that would like to comment? So I'm going to ask our moderator to put that screen back up. There we go. And this is an opportunity.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A panel for public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom corner of your screen. Enter "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and submit it to all panelists. I will now pause for a moment to allow time for submission of requests. Dr. Manzi, at this time, we're not receiving any requests for comment.
All right. If there's no other discussion, there's no comment. Let's take a vote on Dr. McAloon's motion.
Okay. Dr. Manzi,
Aye.
Miss Elliott,
Aye.
Miss Cadenas,
Aye.
Miss Cadenas.
Aye. I approve. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Dr. McAloon,
Aye.
Dr. Zapp,
Enthusiastic aye.
Dr. Lee.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Great. Well, that was the conclusion of my report. Does anyone have any final questions or agenda items they'd like to discuss for the next time? All right, nothing. Well, that's the end of enforcement.
Thank you.
I'll give Brian his computer back.
All righty.
Ms. Dr. Zapp, may I ask Ms. Cooper to give this report?
Thank you, Dr. Zapp. Okay, I will present a rather truncated report, being that COVID kind of put the kibosh on most of the bills that were presented in January. We do have 3 bills that we were looking at. The first 2 just were dead in the water. And this is the end of the 2-year legislative cycle. So they'll have to be resubmitted in the next legislative cycle if they're going to go forward. But the first one was specific to podiatric services. It was AB 1940, and it was trying to achieve more equity with the billing of Medi-Cal. I think you will see this again, and it just couldn't get through the legislative cycle this time, so it's dead. Any questions on 1940? Okay. AB 2549 wasn't specific to podiatric, but it would have allowed, like every other board in DCA, to give special preference to the spouses of military personnel. So that also will have to be resubmitted in the next legislative cycle. It also died. So temporary licensing and military personnel is not going forward. Any questions on that one? Okay, the big one, and one specific to our board and other boards, but what if it's signed by the governor, which we're waiting and expect it to be, is such a relief for our board. So AB 3330, if you look at the attachment, our fees are included under Section 4. And the Business and Professions Code, Section 2499.5, cover all of the Podiatric Medical Board's fees. And we will be charging and receiving January 1st, if the governor signs this, $1,318 for the renewal fee. And the renewal fee is the majority of our income, over 90% of our income. We expect it to generate well in excess of what we will need to stay current with our fund condition. We're only one of a few boards that were able to succeed in this request. We had the fee study attached to the sunset report, and I think that's what helped us a lot. So Brian worked very hard, and I'd like to congratulate him as well. This is if the governor signs it, but we are expecting it, and we really don't know why he hasn't signed it yet. He has signed other bills, but we are expecting this to be signed, and then January 1st, we will get the additional funds. Are there any questions on AB 3330? Well, it certainly is a success for our board. If there's no questions on legislative, I will go to regulatory. Okay, in our regulatory section, we have a rather, it's not controversial. AB 2138 is the statute that implements where the applicant to our board may have a conviction, a felony conviction. If certain requirements are met, we are trying to create a regulation that will allow you to review whether the prior felony or prior criminal conviction is related to the qualifications, functions, and duties of a podiatric medical doctor. So if it's over 7 years, if they have engaged in rehabilitative activities, and we find that there's no substantial relation, we will be able to develop the criteria that will outline mostly those three things and determine whether the applicant's conviction would not allow them to become a podiatric medical doctor in California. So we have looked at this for the last year about, maybe a little more, but what happened was one of the other boards submitted their OAL package and changes needed to be made. We made those changes, but we had to publish those, and the publishing of them ended at the end of August. So now we are ready to make those changes to a packet that will be submitted back to OAL, and we expect that we'll be one of the first boards. Also, if there's changes, we'll be the ones to receive those. But we are on our way to submitting that, and I've been working with Clay Jackson, and we're ready to get that probably before the next board meeting submitted. And you've already reviewed the language and approved it. Are there any questions on AB 2138? I'm not hearing anybody. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I don't think so. At this time, do we ask for public comment on this?
Well, there's no vote, no decision being made.
Okay. So no need to. All right.
We could do it at the end of the exec. Yeah.
Okay. Darlene, do you have something you wanted to ask, or?
Or is my hand raised again? Sorry.
Yeah.
I left it on from the last time, so
okay.
sorry. No questions. I just want to thank staff for especially working so hard on getting this to the governor's desk. So look forward for its passage. Thank you.
Me too. Kathleen, do you happen to know, though, if anyone or if we have any business about, I don't know, anybody asking for us to approve CMEs? So I know there's a fee in there that we can charge if we do the approval, but I think we've talked about this in the past. I can't remember if this is a robust business or not at all.
I think Andrea said in all of our time, and we've been there about the same 5 or 6 years, there's only been one application for that.
Right. Well, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think that might be it then for legislative.
Okay.
Update.
Miss Elliott, would you, should we go on to public education?
Yes, public education program report is next.
Correct. So, good afternoon, or good morning. It's still morning, everybody. I will go ahead and do the update for the public education reports. I'm hoping you can hear me, and I will move on. Discussion for possible action regarding the PMBC's newsletter, website, social media accounts, and PMBC's outreach activities. With COVID, we do know that a lot of things have slowed down, and we did not get to meet in subcommittee for this item. So these things are still kind of pending. At our March 6, 2020 board meeting, we discussed about footnotes, the newsletter that was actually a printed hard copy being put out once a year instead of twice. And there's some discussion on that. The focus of the newsletter was, again, expected to stay the same. And we were still asking for articles from board members regarding the footnotes. And then we also discussed our social media updates, which our staff has been making updates to our Facebook and Twitter accounts, supporting the 2020 census, which was asked by our board, and encouraging members of the public to wear masks and social distancing to avoid the spread of COVID-19. Again, we're always looking for updates or articles that we could share, but would love to hear anybody's input, because we do, since we are going to be meeting for committee in November, definitely want to be able to go back to committee and decide our best route, especially with COVID as well. Everything is moving digital, and so this might be a good time to do that. And I will ask if there are any questions.
I would like to make a comment. You know, I helped put the newsletter together, and it's kind of like, when do the articles go in? We're really not training all of our possible submitters or writers, which are you, board members, as well as stakeholders of the board. But if we had a policy where every fall, and Brian and I have discussed this, we thought this would work really well, but we didn't take a vote on it in June either, to go once a year and to keep it more like a summary of our year of accomplishments and challenges. And then every year we would have this publication. You know, it would be almost like an annual report to the public. It would be, I think, very valuable, and people would be prepared to know where their article was going to go on, you know, in that section of the newsletter. And I think over the years, we would have a long list of every year, what we accomplished, what we went through. It's just the way we're doing it now, it's hard to get articles because there's no set thing in people's mind that if they want to make a submission, you know, and then maybe in committee we can work on, well, if you'd like to submit, here are the topics we suggest, or anything you suggest, you know, with outlined of what is appropriate, what might not be appropriate. Keep it to the 8 pages, or if we want, we can go larger. But the way it's going now, it's really hard to feel like we're being timely and giving information that's really valuable. We do publish some hard copies because they do sit around at DCA and have a value, but we're publishing less hard copies, and we realize it is the electronic copy that's accessed most. I just wanted to add that. So we would need a vote to make this an annual newsletter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's not a bad suggestion for a couple of reasons. You know, I've written a couple of articles about this. I was on this committee for a while. It was always hard to get, I don't know, a real idea of what this newsletter was trying to do or say, and who, you know, of course, who's accessing it. So yes, it's podiatrists, but like you say, it's legislators and other people, you know, in Sacramento that are picking this thing up and reading it, and of course, it's the general public as well. So I think with that in mind, as far as like what the board is doing, you know, month by month, maybe it doesn't have to be like if we had a layout for the paper, you know what I'm saying? Like the board update, and then, you know, I don't know, you know, even information regarding who our new licensees are, how many of our licensees are retiring. I mean, not so much, you know, like dry data, but kind of an article about, you know, the health of podiatric medicine in California this year or something like that. I think that if we had like kind of a basic outline of what you'd like to see in this yearly kind of newsletter, we could attack it and maybe have different committee members, both the podiatrists and the non-podiatrists and our legal team, everyone kind of give us some input on, you know, what this would look like.
Right. Kathleen, I also like the policy idea, having something written and a direct point person where we can tell people, here's our link, submit your story, or if you have a story idea that we can follow up on, just so that there is a clear line, there's a process. And there's maybe a date and deadline, because I think when we don't have a date, that tends to, people put it off. So if we can start funneling people to a date or get them excited about, okay, it's coming up, we need to submit, I think we will get more robust stories. And again, that it will get put on the back burner. So I support the policy idea, definitely.
You know,
this is Michael Zaff. For 30 years, when we received the medical board newsletter, we all turned to the back to see what the enforcements were against fellow podiatrists.
Yeah.
Is that a requirement? We have to publish that in writing, or is putting on the web all we have to do?
I think you only have to publish it in the web, but if you do have a newsletter, they want you to publish it. Not all boards have newsletters, but we're required to put it up onto our website.
Yeah, when we first were reading it, there were no websites. So.
Yes, I think it's standard. Every 6 months, we must update the disciplinary actions. Bethany probably knows what the exact rule is, but she just gives it to me and then I publish it.
Yeah, it's not a requirement to publish it into the newsletter. We just do that. I've heard that before from other DPMs that they're really interested on, those actions. So that's why we continue to leave it in there. But we can definitely still leave it in there. I think it does value. So yeah, go from there. And I think on the policies and stuff like that, that'd be a good meeting with the Public Education Committee to frame that. And then once we get it framed, we'll take a look at it and send it over to Joe. He can take his legal eyes on it and then bring it back to the board for a vote.
So that's a good suggestion. So my question is, do we need to take a vote today that the newsletter will just be once a year, and kind of, knowing that moving forward, the education committee is going to work on some sort of a format?
Dr. Manzi, I would suggest that we send it back to committee and formulate a better process, and at least have something to present to the board that's filtered out a little bit more. Kathleen, what would?
That sounds great. I think the value of putting it in our minutes and having it on the agenda is just extra advertising for what we're looking for, that people understand we do take submissions, but we don't need, we've never had a motion saying it goes twice a year. It just was twice a year. No, the board didn't say you must do it twice a year, so they really don't have to say we do it once a year, but I think it would add to the publication, publishing of our need to receive articles. So we could do it anytime, but I just want to mention, Brian and I were talking about the yearly cycle, and we thought submitting October 30th or something, 31st, somewhere around there, with a drop dead date of November would allow us to finish the year, talk about what happened, and publish before February, the end of February of every year. I just mentioned that as a detail that we could put into the policy.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest that Darlene's suggestion is a good one. You guys will work on this in committee and maybe we'll revisit it. Then you can report back to us at the next board meeting and we can take any action that needs to be taken then, or any assignments you feel you'd like to.
Okay. Okay, so Ms. Elliott and I, we will work together on preparing the doc for the next board meeting or some future upcoming board meeting, depending on how long that would take.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, and then the second part of the public, the social media. Ms. Elliott, shall I go, or would you like to do number 2, the social media?
Actually, go ahead and if you have anything to add for the social media, yes, go ahead, go.
Well, I'd just like to add that we work with DCA to update public messages through Twitter and Facebook. I don't think we try to encourage people to reach us through those two avenues, but I'd like to know what the board would like. I mean, we use them for announcing important things like COVID, wearing masks, but we don't really push in Twitter or Facebook our board meetings and things like that. So I think we should all maybe start looking at those and participating in those, and then we could get feedback from you as to what works, what it looks like from the receiver's end. And that also goes for our website. We could always use feedback regarding the website, as it gets stale without that. We have some things up there that maybe should be taken down, but we don't notice they're still up there, or, just use I guess what I'm saying is our current social media it's not small. It's not that. It's just we only push messages through the social media, mostly through DCA and their desires. So I just want to mention that's available to all of us. And we could have a schedule, don't eat sugar, watch your feet. I don't know how we would do it, but it could be a whole plan of what this board might want to communicate to the public with a schedule. We just haven't done that yet. And I don't know that we want to do that, but we could. As I mentioned in the report, right now we just mostly limit it to these public announcements.
So Kathleen, my question to you is, what does the Medical Board of California do with their accounts? Do you have any idea?
I think they do pretty much what we do through DCA, except they have a much more robust publication department. They have, full-time staff and they have much more to say because many of their bills are, they have just much more activity that affect their licensees. We could maybe just step it up a little and see if we get good feedback. Maybe just like announce our board meetings, little encouragement about taking care of your feet, things like that, to go out regularly, like maybe once a month or whatever the board. I just would like it if we start thinking about how to use that to get the board's goals. And we're doing what we have to do now, but we could do more is what I'm saying.
So as a person who does not use Twitter, but did you say Facebook also was something?
Those are the two big ones, right?
Yeah. And I'm not actually, I mean, I'm on Facebook, but I don't really go on it that much. I would just like to know if there's a downside to this. Like, if this is going to open us up to, like, I don't know, like comments that we then have to be totally always looking at our Twitter and Facebook accounts, make sure no one's posting something we don't want posted up there. I mean, I don't know how it works as far, is it a one-way thing with Twitter and Facebook, or is it anybody can comment if they're a Twitter user or a Facebook user?
Well, I think right now the way it is, it's there. People will get notice if they follow us. But other than that, no, we don't have any controversy or any negative feedback on anything, which I like. And I do think we have to have purpose. I mean, to upload and publish for no reason, just to upload and publish, that's not a goal. But I mean, if we had a plan, or if the board were to come to a consensus on things that are important to our licensees and stakeholders, I think we're doing a great job. And I think for the size of our board, we do more. We have the publication. That's a big thing. And we do upload to our Twitter and Facebook regularly. Our website is up to date with all the important announcements right on the front page. I mean, we're certainly doing what we have to do. I'm just saying this is a tool, and it could be used for the board's purposes.
So my suggestion would be, once again, go back to the education committee and say, these are the types of things we put on Twitter and Facebook, and these are the types of things that we think we could increase or improve upon, and then maybe let us take a look at that. Is that,
yeah? Or maybe we should do that in committee too.
Right.
I agree.
Anybody else have something to say about this? So I think it is a good suggestion. I mean, marketing's everything these days. So yeah, I would suggest that the committee come back with us with something if they want to expand what we're typically discussing now on social media.
Okay, that's great direction for me. I appreciate it. And Ms. Elliott, we'll work together for the next committee meeting on these topics. Okay.
And also, if I could ask the board, if you haven't, because I haven't, so I'm going to do this, get onto the Twitter and Facebook accounts here and look at what's up there. It might give us better insight as to what goes on these accounts and what we'd like to see go on in these accounts.
It's a great idea.
Hi, this is Daniel Lee. I fully support the social media updates. I think these are great ideas. As we have seen the breakdown on the ages and the practitioners coming to California, you could see the breakdown on the generation, our millennials, our Gen Zs, moving up the ranks. So staying ahead with social media and sending information is how they get the information these days, more so than our own websites. And having the age to stay ahead and be more sophisticated as we go, I think will be very important as a step to be ahead of the game and be able to inform our public, especially about health issues, food concerns, and not just licensing.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, because he's right. The average age of our population is most likely on Facebook and Twitter much more than the aging population. So I think it's a really good idea that we take a good look at this. And, we want it kind of fresh and, what would be, not to just fill space, but what would be of interest and informative and not necessarily, controversial or I don't know, whatever. Okay, so Education Committee, it looks like you guys have a little bit of work to do in committee, which is great. And if there's no more comments here, we're going to move on.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, looks like we're getting towards the end of this. The executive management, it's that time of year to elect new officer positions and new committee appointments. The reason why we changed it to do it in September, because it takes us a couple of months to make the changes with the website. You get the appropriate stamps for the new president if the new president's coming in. So it just gets us ahead so we're not backlogged, especially when it comes to new licenses and all that for the president's stamp. Those take a quite lengthy effort to get those stamps in place and approved and all that. So I could turn it over to Judy if she wants to comment on this, and I can give a recommendation how this should be looked at. Judy, do you have any comment on this as the chair?
I mean, because of the COVID, situation, one thing, well, first of all, we do need to get Dr. Lee, I think, involved in at least some of these committees because we do have to, we need them. So we have to keep that in mind when we're putting these committees together. However, we haven't gone through sunset yet because of the delay of COVID. So one suggestion was that we just keep everything the way it is until we, rather than reelect everything, or it's up to everybody else. But that's one suggestion, so that none of these changes have to necessarily be made. But that was one suggestion.
Right. So that's a good suggestion because we do have the sunset. From what I understand, it's going to be on the calendar for 2021. Just don't know when, probably sometime in March. We still got that little hurdle to do. We took a big chunk out of it, right, with the fee increase because that was one of our issues. And the other issue is the probation disclosure to get us up to the same status as MDs and DOs on their probation disclosure. So that's the other challenge that we're going to have during our sunset. Rather than that, we took a big chunk out of it, like I said, not anticipating anything going wrong with our sunset, just maybe a few discussions on that probation disclosure, as they're going to call that a policy change. And then it's going to have to go through in different committees and all that kind of stuff. They're just not going to say it's unsubstantial and they're just going to scratch it out and put us up there. So that's going to be a little bit of work on the legislative side. So I think that's a great suggestion, but have you turn it over for discussion on that?
Okay, so I see Darlene and Kathleen have comments. So Darlene, what's your comment?
I just want to echo, I think 2020 was a wash for all of us. As much as we've been working, I do feel like we should keep the committee assignments the same, except for, again, replace Dr. Manstroff's position on enforcement and move forward. And that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Maria, you have something also?
No, I just want to echo Darlene that it makes sense to keep things as they are and assign Dr. Lee into one of the committees and responsibilities. But I'm in favor of keeping the slates as they are, and especially as we move into next year.
This is Macklin. I don't know how to raise my hand.
Okay. It's okay. We hear you.
Not just figuratively, but literally. So I think I'm on the same page with everybody else. So if we look at specifics, now I'm loath to volunteer anybody else because that's always mean. You go out to put coins in the meter. Next thing you come back to a meeting and you're on a chair of a committee. But what we see, I think our priority, given everything we're talking about, is that Dr. Mansdorf's spot on enforcement chair has to be replaced. Now, again, not wanting to nominate anybody without their permission, but as Ms. Cardenas is currently on that committee, it seems to me that would be appropriate to suggest that she might consider being the chair of that committee to replace Dr. Mansdorf. And then that would leave the four second spots than for Dr. Lee and myself, 2 for him and 2 for me, for these second spots on those committees. Is that consistent with what other people see?
Yeah, let me just look at these things.
Oh, that's a good suggestion. I'll let the board comment, but I was kind of thinking it would be nice to have a local DPM, maybe in the legislative committee, because it's really helpful when CPMA and myself, without the doctor's experience, right? Because most of my DPMs are distance away. If Dr. Lee would come to the legislative, if we have to run over to the Capitol, and we get time notification when that's going to happen, that his testimony as far as doctors of podiatric medicine might be critical to get through agendas. Just my 2 cents. I want to mute.
Have there been cases where you've needed one of us and we couldn't be there?
There has been, yeah, there has been. But CPMA, like I said, we're in constant communication, and usually a representative from CPMA would be there. But they're speaking towards the association and their association population. But we pretty much are down the same railroad tracks, right? We're echoing the same words. So, but it'd just be nice, especially when we have the sunset coming up. Like I said, we do have that probation disclosure battle to go through. It would be nice to have a DPM rather than drawing, like, for instance, you, Dr. Zaff, from Southern California here for maybe 20 minutes, and then you're back, on the airplane. So it's up to you guys on how you want to take a draft at this, or who gets what spot and nominates who and all that kind of stuff. But that's just the way I was looking at it. But and the enforcement, it would always be good. Maria is well versed with enforcement. I think she's been on the enforcement committee for a while now. But it's also good to have a DPM on the enforcement, just in case there's surgical questions or anything like that.
So would you suggest that, I think Dr. Lee should go on the enforcement committee. I think that'd be great if he'd agree to it and everyone's okay with that. And the legislative thing is, you bring up a very good point about, I can't get to Sacramento that quickly. And so, I don't know. I don't think it's a bad idea to also have him on that committee if or if you feel, Dr. Lee, that's too many committees, then we could ask somebody on legislative to go to enforcement. Anybody else? Oh, Darlene, go ahead. I see your hand up.
My apologies. I thought
Okay,
I lowered
fine.
my hand.
All right. So, Brian, how should we proceed with all this?
Well, let's hear from Dr. Lee.
That's a good idea.
And see what he thinks. Unfortunately, we only have seven members. We need 8. We're working on the 8th one ever since I've been here, right? Or ever since Christine Dixon left, we've been working on her spot. Be nice to have 8, then everybody just have one committee, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, right now, it looks like we have Dr. Macklin on 2 committees. And then Judy, of course, you would be in executive management. Miss Elliott with 1. So let's hear from Dr. Lee, see what he's comfortable with. And then you guys can have a discussion, and then somebody needs to nominate him, and then you need to take a vote. Joe, am I tracking that right? We haven't done this for a while.
Yeah, that sounds right. If you guys are going to take action, then there needs to be a motion, a second, and then an opportunity for public comment prior to or during the board's vote.
Okay.
So before we hear from Dr. Lee, Maria, do you have something you'd like to say?
Yeah, thank you. I think in the past what we did is the chair did the committee appointments, at least with them, and I think that makes sense. I would also suggest that right now I'm sitting in 2 committees. I'm sitting in licensing and enforcement, and I would be honored to take on chairing enforcement, but it might be prudent just in terms of time commitment, if there's a way that I could focus on that and not necessarily be so spread across the board. But, you know, again, I think Judy, I'll be okay with whatever role the board feels I can provide support for.
Thank you. And before we hear it once again from Dr. Lee, I want to ask Darlene. Darlene, you're also on 2 committees. Do you feel like you'd rather get down to 1, or do you think you can do 2? I know you and Maria are kind of busy right now with things going on in your lives.
Right. Well, right now I think in the next couple of months it'll ease up. So I am perfectly fine to staying on the 2 committees. But if somebody is interested, then I of course I won't hold space. And if somebody wants to learn something else, absolutely. But yeah, no, it does not bother me at all. Thank you.
Okay, great. Maria, your hand's up again. Do you have a little more to say here?
No, I just forgot to take it down. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so Dr. Lee, how do you feel about all this? What do you have to say?
Hi, this is Dr. Lee. I'm happy with whatever discussion everybody had so far. So I'm okay with the enforcement. I'm okay helping out with legislative. So let's move forward.
Okay. All right. So, does someone want to make a motion regarding our, first, I guess we should just go with our current officer positions.
Well, I can make a motion that Ms. Cardenas be elected chair of the enforcement committee.
We're not doing the committees yet. We're going to just first start on our current officer positions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. I apologize.
Okay, so no problem.
Well, let me just confirm the motion. It would mean Dr. Manzi, president, Ms. Elliott, vice president, Ms. Cadenas, secretary, right? Is that what we're saying for officer position?
That's what they currently are, unless you want to go through each one. That's fine too. But that's what they currently are. So if we're going to just keep it going, that would be the motion.
I move that we retain those 3 current officer positions for 2020-2021.
I second that motion. This is Maria.
Okay. So the motion by Dr. McAloon, second by Ms. Cadenas, is to maintain Manzi president, Elliott vice president, and Cadenas secretary.
This is Joe. This would be a good opportunity to open the forum for public comment prior to the board's vote.
Thank you.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A panel for public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom corner of your screen. In the Ask field, please enter "I would like to make a comment" and submit it to all panelists. I will now pause for a moment to allow time for submission of requests. Dr. Manzi, at this time, we've not received any requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
The panel is closed.
Thank you. Okay, Kathleen. Anybody else have anything else to say about this? Okay, Kathleen?
Okay, so the motion to keep the officers as they've been. Dr. Manzi,
Aye.
Miss Elliott,
Aye.
Miss Cadenas,
Aye.
Dr. McAloon,
Aye.
Dr. Zapp,
Aye.
Dr. Lee.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, now we're going to move on to the committees. Currently, the public education is Ms. Elliott and Dr. McAloon. The licensing is myself and Ms. Cadenas. The enforcement is a blank and Ms. Cadenas. The legislative is Dr. Zapp and Dr. McAloon. And the executive management is myself and Ms. Elliott. So the first, so we need someone for enforcement. We want to do these individually, or should we try to get a slate first of all of them and then vote?
I have a question.
Sure.
Ms. Cardenas mentioned that previously that only the chair had to be voted, and then the chair appointed the second person. Is that true fact? And so I just want clarity if that is a fact or that we are working with. That's a good question.
I don't really remember. If you want the truth, I don't know. Does someone know the answer to that question?
I don't remember that since I've been here 5 or 6. I think the board or the president, I think, is actually the one that appoints these committees.
Oh God.
Yeah, that was. I think that we had the discussion a while back because we had the 2-person committees, and we based the precedents to make it easy was just appointing the committees. But we can vote on it. I'm not tied to it.
Well, actually, though, that's a good point. I mean, here's my other question too. We've always tried to put, like at least, like a person, not a DPM, on, some of these committees. But honestly, I think we only have, 2 of our committee members that are not podiatrists, and so it does put a little bit of a burden on them. So I don't know that it's necessary when we do these committees to we should keep that in mind, is what I'm saying. As far as public education goes, I don't know, Darlene and Carolyn, are you guys all set with staying with that?
I have no problem with that myself.
Darlene, do you want us to try to see if someone else wants to do this? I know you're kind of busy with your campaign and stuff.
Actually, no, I would like to stay on the public education. I think especially going forward with looking into social media, I would actually enjoy staying on this.
Okay, great. Do you want to stay on as chair, or do you feel like you don't need to do that, or is that fine with you?
I am good with either or.
Okay. All right. So
are we doing this individually? Are you guys gonna take a vote on public education to leave it as it is?
So
and then
I was
we'll go
thinking,
on to licensing.
Yes, we could do it that way, or we could get the whole panel set. I don't know, whichever way you think's easiest.
Yeah, I'd recommend flip and flopping people around and vote at the end.
Okay, I agree with you, Mike. I think once we get everyone kind of happy with everything, then we should do it. So the big question is Dr. Lee. He said he'd do both or either, and I can understand wanting him in Sacramento. So I'm going to suggest that we do for sure put him on legislative, and we can leave if you want. We can have Dr. Zapp stay on that as well, and then Dr. McAloon, if you don't mind, we could move you to licensing with, well, I don't know, unless who wants to stay with licensing. You're in licensing and enforcement. So Maria, take your pick, I guess. And I was going to bring Dr. McAloon either with me at licensing, or we can put her on enforcement with Dr. Lee.
I think it's Dr. Macaroon recommended that I take on enforcement and then as chair, just because I've been there for a while, but I would like to have Dr. Lee or DPM in that committee with me.
Great. So we're going to make you
And
the
then I would
chair of that.
volunteer to move over to licensing with you then, Judy.
Thank you. Perfect. And that kind of like frees up Maria. Okay. And Carolyn, why don't you want to chair that department?
Which one are you?
Licensing.
Okay, so you're asking for you to stay on licensing, but for me to be chair and you be the second person?
Yes.
Fine. Okay, fine.
Perfect. Okay.
And then I'll stay on public education with Ms. Elliott.
Right. Okay. And then
Fine.
Dr. Lee, if you don't
I
mind.
accept that recommendation.
Great. And Dr. Lee, if you don't mind, we're putting you on enforcement and legislative. You will be the committee member with Ms. Cadenas being the chair of enforcement, and then you'll be also with legislative, and it's up to you and Dr. Zapp as to if Dr. Zapp wants to stay as the chair, that's fine. And since this is kind of your first year, it might be a good idea just to come on the committee with him. He has a lot of experience on this board, so that would be pretty good if everyone would agree with that.
Sounds good.
And Mike, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, and then executive management, Darlene, you're on that with me as well. So why don't you stay on that, because you're going to be president after me, okay? Probably, most likely, if you don't retire into politics.
No, I agree. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to share the current what we're going to put on regarding committee appointments. Public education would be the chair, Ms. Elliott, and the committee member would be Dr. McAloon. Licensing, the chair would be Dr. McAloon, and I will be the committee member with her. Enforcement would be Ms. Cadenas would be the chairman, and Dr. Lee is going to be with it on her, a committee member. And Dr. Zapp will be the chair of legislative with Dr. Lee as a committee member. And executive management will stay as it is, Dr. Manzi being the chair and Ms. Elliott being the committee member. So that's what I'm proposing. Is there a motion to go with this, or is there any discussion about my proposal? Okay, then I guess I should open this up to public comment. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can open to a public comment now, or someone can make a motion and second the motion prior to public comment, but anytime during or prior to deliberations and vote is proper.
Okay. All right, so is there a motion to before we open the public comment for this suggestion of the roster?
This is Maria, so moved.
Great. Do I have a second?
McAloon, second.
Great. Now we're going to open it up for public comment.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A panel for public comment. Again, if you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Type, "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions on the screen. I will now pause for a moment to allow time for requests to be submitted.
Okay, I don't think we're getting a public comment.
Yeah, we've received no requests so far. I will close the panel.
Thank you. Okay, Kathleen, do you want to make you want me to repeat the stuff, or do you want to go ahead and?
I think I have it, but does anyone want it repeated?
Okay, great.
Okay, the vote. Dr. Manzi,
Aye.
Miss Elliott,
Aye.
Miss Cadenas,
Aye.
Dr. McAloon,
Aye.
Dr. Zapp,
Aye.
Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Thank you. Passes unanimous.
Okay. So now there's future agenda items.
Okay, first we have to
sorry.
make a motion to accept the executive officers' reports, A through E, I think it is. Yeah.
Dr. Zapp moves to accept.
Thank you.
Cadena seconds.
Thank you.
And then discussion.
Is there any discussion on these items? Okay.
And then public comment.
Is there any public comment on these items?
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A panel for public comment. We are displaying instructions on the screen. I will pause for a few moments to allow time for submission.
Okay. I think we can close the public comment.
Seeing no requests, I've closed the panel.
Great. All right. So shall we
And a vote.
and yes.
Okay.
Or
So
did we do a vote?
this motion is to accept the executive director's report, and I'll take your vote now. Dr. Manzi,
Aye.
Ms. Elliott,
Aye.
Ms. Cadenas,
Aye.
Dr. McAloon,
Aye.
Dr. Zaff,
Aye.
and Dr. Lee.
Aye.
Unanimously passed.
Okay. Adjourn. Okay. So, okay. Now, future agenda items.
So in December, what I have written down is just because I don't know what the future lies here is we're going to have a discussion about our dates for future meetings for 2021. I'm just kind of waiting to see what the COVID does and to see if we're going to travel and go places or use the same format. So, so hopefully there's a little more guidance in the December's meeting. So I put that on the future meeting.
Okay. The things that we discussed.
Also,
go ahead, Mike.
we also were going to discuss what to do with podiatrists licensed in California practicing telemedicine from other states.
Okay.
Hi, this is Joe. Yeah, I have that in my notes. I'm going to do some research, and I'll be able to discuss more intelligently the next time we meet.
Okay, great.
And I do have a comment or to add to the agenda is to go over our strategic goals. I know with COVID, we've kind of put that on the back burner, but I just want to make sure that we're still moving forward with the goals that we outlined for the year, and it will be a good review for our newest member of the board.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, and one other thing, I know with our name change, I just wanted to, maybe we can just address that real quickly to ensure that everything's been changed over and that we're not waiting or have any outstanding items.
That's
We can do that on the future because it's not agendized for discussion. So we'll do that for an update on name change.
Okay.
The things we discussed during licensing, are those things that just get discussed, I think get discussed in committee and then bring up if there's anything we want to put into something that might need to be voted on.
Right.
right? Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
All righty. Okay. Are there any other things people would like to bring up here for future agenda item?
I don't have a future agenda item, but I do have some comments, so I don't know if you want me to wait till the end.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. This is as good a time as any.
Okay, perfect. Well, I just really want to thank Brian and his leadership during COVID, making sure that he kept the bill for getting our fee schedule. Also, just the line of communication was so helpful, us understanding what was going on with staff and ensuring their safety. And also for him also jumping in and fielding calls when he had no staff in the office. So again, just want to thank you so much. And I also just want to say thank you to the staff because they did not miss a beat this entire time. And I know they kept our customer service high internally and externally. So again, just wanted to say a big thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So do we have to do anything with these future agenda items except acknowledge them? I don't remember if I'm supposed
I don't think so.
No, okay, great.
I'll just acknowledge them.
Okay, they're acknowledged. I guess we're going to go on to adjournment, unless anybody else has anything else to say. Oh, do I need a public comment for? No. Okay. So I do want to also, thank everyone. Darlene is right. This thing kept going even during COVID. And there's been a lot of involvement of our staff with the Federation of Podiatric Medical Boards because of all this licensing issues. And they have been working pretty hard. And it's amazing that they kept it as together as they did. And they put a lot of time and energy into things that, we don't all see all the time. So I do want to thank them for their participation. And, trust me, being on the Federation board, you see boards I see every board in the whole country, and California's board is by far the shining star of how a board should be run, and it's really amazing when you see the discrepancies or the differences of the boards across the country. So this is quite a job these guys do. So I want to thank them. Okay, anybody else have anything else to say before I adjourn this meeting? Okay. Once again, Dr. Lee, thank you so much and welcome. We're so happy you're here. And also to our to Mr. Chin for participating, and Mr. Payne for your participation as well. So is that it?
That seems to be it.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. I'll let you guys run the adjournment.
All right. So I think someone has to make a motion.
A motion.
Yeah. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I second that motion. This is Darlene.
Who was the first?
I think Darlene's the first.
Okay. All right. Who's the second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn. Dr. Manzi.
Aye.
Miss Elliott.
Aye.
Miss Cadenas.
Aye.
Dr. McAloon.
Aye.
Dr. Zapp.
Aye.
And Dr. Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, great. All right, guys. Well, anything, feel free to call me anytime, whatever. But the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bye,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Good job.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.